I want to share a few thoughts on the latest developments with the tragedy in Essex. Bit of a change in the direction of where this is going, because it seems that now the majority of the victims are being identified as Vietnamese, not Chinese. Although there may still be some Chinese victims. I know the Chinese ambassador, Liu Xiaoming, has sent a team to the site to presumably help local authorities identify people. It may be that these people came via China, because that's where snakeheads tend to operate mostly, particularly Fujian province. It's a very strange case. I think it's different from the Dover case in the sense that firstly the victims are Vietnamese, but also, I mean, initially I thought there was obvious parallels between the two, but I think that there's a few things that don't make sense about this. Number one, this driver who's been arrested, the guy from County Armagh, Mo Robinson, obviously the police feel they have something on him in order to keep him for questioning. If he's being tied to the arrests that I understand have been made in Warrington, then it may be that he is a bit more than a driver, and maybe he is involved in this smuggling operation. But what I find, there's a few things I find as important question points. Number one, drivers apparently cannot open these refrigerated containers. They have no way to open them. They're sealed shut. Their job is to transport from A to B. The BBC spoke to a Polish driver, and he showed that he had no way to open it. And a lot of drivers have said they never know what's in their trucks, in their cargo. It seems that his the lorry parts had come via Northern Ireland to Holyhead in North Wales and then on to Essex, whereas the I forget the formal terminology, but the truck part, the lorry parts, where the people were found, had come from Zeebrugge. So where exactly they got on is still going to be, I think that's an important question, because it will determine the time of death, and so that may even come into jurisdiction. It was found in Britain, but say they died on the Dutch side, does that mean the Dutch now have responsibility? Who knows? One thing is for sure, it must have been an agonising death. I mean, to be in cramped conditions up to minus 25 degrees, it's horrendous. But another thing that I find strange about this driver is that he apparently fainted when he made the discovery. I didn't know that it was him that actually made the discovery, but if that is true, that would point to his potential innocence, because if he's involved in this operation, well, I suppose it could show that he wouldn't want the cargo to die, because presumably if it's organised crime he wouldn't get paid if that's the case. So it may just be that he fainted from genuine shock either way, but it also makes me think that this was an innocent lorry driver potentially who got a shock finding 39 bodies in his lorry. You know, if he was involved in the smuggling operation, he would obviously know there was 39 bodies there, but 39 people there. But common sense dictates that if you're involved in the smuggling operation, you would turn the refrigerating off so that your cargo, it sounds a very insensitive way to talk about it, but so they wouldn't die. I'd even make an analogy with the transatlantic slave trade. If you had slaves who died on the voyage over in the Atlantic, they were worthless to the investors, to the slavers. So they didn't want them to die on the way. It's kind of the same principle here. I have a friend who said that he feels that this is just because the driver's working class and it's a way for the establishment to scapegoat the working class. I don't know. My personal feeling is he may be involved to an extent, but maybe not very deep, because I don't think the police can simply arrest him and hold him for this long simply for being the driver. I don't know if that was the case in 2000 or not, but clearly they feel they need more time to question him. Clearly they feel that there's things that are not adding up. If he knows the people that were arrested in Warrington, that would maybe suggest that he is involved in a more deep way. So I think though, if he is cleared, the media needs to make that absolutely clear, because I can imagine this guy's, if he is innocent, he's basically being called a mass murderer, in everything but words. So if he is cleared, the media need to also make it very clear that he's an innocent man, because I imagine his reputation could suffer. If he's guilty, I hope he gets years and years behind bars, because it's truly evil. But we just don't know yet. The information is still emerging. As for the victims, again, this is a strange aspect of it. The young woman that initially was shown by the BBC, the 26-year-old Vietnamese woman, and like a lot of Asian women, she looked younger. She looked like a teenager, very childlike face, very... it just adds a sort of sentimental, emotional impact that this has. And what I find strange is that she was texting her parents saying she couldn't breathe, so she obviously had a smartphone. These are not really the stereotype of desperate migrants in rags fleeing a war zone. They're clearly coming to Britain for what they would see as a better life. Vietnam is a developing country, but they're not fleeing a war zone. And I don't know if it's a case of fleeing persecution, being a communist country, if they're dissidents, who knows. I think it's more likely this is a situation of wanting to get to Britain for opportunities. Maybe there's family here. In my local shopping centre, there's Vietnamese nail polishers, and who knows, half of them are probably illegal. So I think there's a whole lucrative market with this, and like all organised crime, the subjects probably don't know fully what they're getting into. They're probably told, okay, you're going to be put on a truck, but it won't be very long. They're probably not told it's refrigerated. And that just makes it all the more heartbreaking and tragic. It's just a very strange case. And Vietnam, this is not a country we would necessarily, when we think of migrants, we think of Afghanistan, Sudan, Syria, Iran. Not Vietnam. It's not in a state of war. It is a developing country, but it's not, it's not one of the first places we would think of. So it's a strange situation, and I just hope that the families can know sooner rather than later. But the fact that people will go to these extents, even if they're not fleeing a war zone, it's still a desperate thing to do. And some people say, oh well, I know a safe route, go the legal way through the airport. Well, of course people shouldn't break the law, but that doesn't mean that we should be desensitized to the human tragedy here. Being desperate and breaking a law in that desperation that is illegal, but it's not, it's not like raping someone or arson or terrorism. I mean, no one can rationally look at that young woman and say she's in the same category as an ISIS terrorist. She's just a naive young woman who'd done a desperate thing. And because I refuse to believe anyone who doesn't know, anyone who knows that this situation, they wouldn't do that. I refuse to believe someone would knowingly go into a refrigerated container for many hours. When the Vietnamese men were interviewed in France, they hadn't even heard of this disaster. That indicates to me that these snake-headed gangs are misleading them. And another strange aspect, apparently the gang masters had paid back the families. So whether that's trying to wash their hands of it, because that's different from what I've heard of snakeheads in the past, where they extort, for example with the Morecambe Bay tragedy, they extort money from the families forever. There's always some added sort of caveat that, oh well, this is the money for that, or this is the money for that. That's how these criminals operate. One thing is for sure though, whilst there's a difference between trafficking and smuggling, trafficking is arguably worse because it's people being forced against their will. Smuggling is still bad because of the dangers involved and because people are being misled. The criminals involved in this, transporting human beings in this way, it is truly one of the most evil crimes. And I do think for the top level people involved, I think it would be warranting a whole life tariff. But like I say, this driver, it's just difficult to know at this point how much he knows. The village where he's from says they're in shock. Well, that's always a response, frankly. Who knows? I hope that if he is innocent, he's totally cleared, and the press make that absolutely clear. Because if he's an innocent man, this is a nightmare for him to go through as well. And it must make a lot of lorry drivers very nervous, thinking, well, could I be in that situation? On the other hand, if he's involved, I've no sympathy, and I hope that he faces justice. But time will tell. It's a very, very sad case.